display.
بلا سلايد شو. It's fine ما هيك.
Yeah. You can display your slides if you want. هيك بيكون it will be more clear for everyone. Hello everyone. We just kicked off our webinar for today. Thank you for joining. We will wait as usual, like 4-5 minutes maximum, to give the opportunity for everyone to join and to have maximum attendance at start time. So bear with us, like 4 minutes maximum. Thank you very much. Okay. I think we can start. Thank you again, everyone, for joining our webinar. We're so happy that we are always able to get people interested in our topics and to have you joining our webinar every time. So I will say good afternoon, good morning, or good evening. It depends on which area you are in the world. So basically, today we will be talking about Syria sanctions eased. What must you know, or what should we know about this new move in our ecosystem and environment? Um, so basically, I just want to introduce a little bit governance dynamics for those who doesn't know much about governance dynamics. Governance dynamics is a specialized boutique firm in governance, risk management, compliance, fraud, and internal audit, as well as ESG and other topics that are related to this sphere of governance. Shawki, can you move to the second slide, please? So basically, we were established in 2018, and we are considered as authorized trainer for OSEG, and we have a quality mark for our training and capacity building programs that is mostly related to NASBA, one of the best accreditation bodies for quality in terms of training. We are also partnered with PECB, providing lots of topics related to ISO training, self-paced and in-person training and online training. So we are able to deliver all these suite of trainings in person and online and blended with recognized, globally recognized certificates. For us, all these webinars are part of our knowledge sharing and knowledge transfer effort that Governance Dynamics is committed to. Our goal really is to support professionals and corporates in the GCC region to implement best practices, best tools, and to be empowered with the best knowledge possible. So we are here not only for business, but also for improving yani, and living the values that we preach for in our activities. This is our sixth webinar. We started with ESG. We discussed webinars about the internal audit latest standards issued by IIA. We also had a webinar about artificial intelligence and the GRC ecosystem. So, and now we are going more into the, as we mentioned, the Syria sanctions and what are the latest information that we need to know. It's very important for you to attend the webinar as much as possible and to fill the survey at the end, the evaluation form at the end of the webinar, because we are monitoring all this. It's part of our learning and growth process, and it will enable us also to offer a small discount for training programs for those who yani, attend the full webinar and fill the evaluation. And for sure, follow us on the LinkedIn page. You can find it here in on the slide, but please make sure to follow us on the LinkedIn page. Basically, our LinkedIn is our platform actually to communicate everything about our training, our discounts, our activities, and our publications. So make sure to follow us on LinkedIn. Today's topic is both timely and critical. So, this is why we want always to be ahead of what's taking place and providing you with the latest information. As a regulatory landscape is shifting, is moving, sanctions are evolving, especially after the developments. We can say that positive developments regarding Syria. It is important for governance professionals, compliance professionals, legal advisors, financial institutions, and investors to know more about the new risks, the new opportunities, and the boundaries of what's taking place now in Syria. So during this webinar, we will try to clarify the scope and types of sanctions, including recent relaxations that took place for Syria. We will try to unpack the differences between the US, United States sanctions frameworks and the European ones. We will examine also the general licenses, OFAC 50% rule, and other compliance obligations. And we will try to offer deeper understanding of this geopolitical risk, economic risk, and what are the opportunities that we can grasp in this, or being the first to go back to Syria and invest there. I'm honored really to welcome our speaker today, Mr. Shawki Ahwash. He is a seasoned anti-financial crime expert and consultant, bringing more than 20 years of specialized experience in the financial sector with strong focus on AML and fighting terrorist financials and transactions and financial crime. He is a former banker and MLRO expert in the Lebanese banks. Actually, he's a subject matter expert for leading consulting companies in the GCC region and the MENA region, specialized in training for sanctions, fraud, proliferation finance, and other topics. I would like to welcome Mr. Shawki Ahwash. Just one final note. At the end of the webinar, we will open the floor for questions from your side. So please, you can raise your hand whenever you want at the end, and we will give you we will unmute you to ask your question. During the webinar, you have the Q&A section. You can post your questions within this Q&A section, and I will also, if you wish, ask the question on your behalf. Please proceed, Mr. Shawki, and thank you.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Muhammad, for this elaborate introduction, introducing us to the different suites and programs that are offered by Governance Dynamics. And I'm really honored to be, I would say, one of the uh, partners. I consider myself one of the a member of the family in Governance Dynamics, and happy to be leading this webinar today, which is attended by professionals, maybe businessmen or audience interested in discovering the sanction space. Excuse me a little bit for my voice. So, guys, today we're gonna have a deep dive as well as a walkthrough about these unfolding events in the sanction space regarding the latest relaxation on Syria sanctions. However, before we have this zoom in on Syria sanctions, maybe it's good to pave the way for some ideas that will help us understand more what does this relaxation mean, how to respond to this relaxation while staying vigilant, while staying aware of the geopolitics of it, of some of the hidden complexities within any sanction relaxation, because nothing happens like overnight and everything is permissible. We will see that there are still some restrictions. Now, with that said, what we're going to see is a kind of introduction to corporate governance, which is a key enabler in maintaining a good compliance program, the type of sanctions, the sanction list, what to look at, where to search, or what kind of screening should be done. And this relies heavily on your geographic footprint. So if you are like having a transaction with Australia, then the OSTRAC list is important to screen. If you have a local business that is not exposed to a foreign jurisdiction, maybe local list will be fine. So it all depends on the DNA of your business, the complexity, the product sophistication, and other factors, the scope of sanctions against countries, individuals, or entities, and then we will definitely be putting the light on the Syria sanction and try to give you as much as we can insight, knowledge, and what this relaxation means in terms of doing business and reintegrating Syria into the international financial community. Muhammad, I'm audible, clear, visible, all okay? Okay, it seems Muhammad didn't hear me. All
Yeah,
right,
yes, I
so
did. I gave you a thumbs up, yo. So
uh, uh,
you're perfectly audible, and we can hear you and see your slide movement.
okay, great, thank you. To start with, today governance, risk, and compliance integrate, intersect, converge in multiple areas. That's why, first and foremost, the senior management in any organization, and here I'm not talking about banks or FIs, any business with supply chain, any business doing transaction with a counterparty, need to heed these risks and be aware of the compliance threats. So first of all is to set a risk appetite framework, meaning deciding from the outset what kind of transactions I'm willing to do, what kind of transaction I'm not willing to do, what kind of customers I'm willing to deal with, and what kind of customers I don't want to deal with, like industries, oil and gas, charities, sensitive good or technology. And we know these times how the war is about reaching to sensitive product like semiconductors, laser technology, which unfortunately is becoming an important ingredient for the wars going on. So geopolitics is impacting compliance. Everyone wants to build a drone to be innovative in terms of spying, in terms of military upgrade, and they need this sensitive equipment. So sanctions are reacting by putting like more pressure, more restrictions on the importation and exportation of these sensitive goods. So having a deal today around these goods is not straightforward, and it has many risks within that transaction. Also, how the organization should be sensitive to compliance risk, like having a good code of conduct within the organization, clear policies, a clear know your employee strategy to make sure that only those that are fit and proper join the organization, the reporting, the disclosures, and so that the organization will be kind of avoiding penalties and other legal risk. Adverse media reputation that may come to the organization that will be violating the sanctions or acting against this restriction. This is a clear adverse impact on the business. Technology, if you are today like doing transaction monitoring system or doing screening, manual work will be such a headache. So you need to move to automation. And automation is sometimes not risk-free. You need to make sure the vendor you are dealing with is capable of delivering the right tool. You need to go into sandboxes. You need to go into your testing environment to make sure that at the end of the day, you are able to catch or detect any matching hit, so you don't process the transaction when you have a matching hit against a blacklist. So this is a bit critical area and need awareness on the side of the organization and building your algorithm, because screening is about technology. You have to calibrate the algorithm in a very a delicate way, so you aim at the right target without the system producing too many false positive that will be overwhelming to you. Also, geopolitical risk is becoming one major element within compliance and sanctions. So just one point regarding the screening. Uh, the false negative, which may be due to a mechanical error in the system or to lack of good calibration, it means that you are dealing with a sanction hit or a sanction match, but your system failed to alert you. And this is very harmful for the organization, because sanctions are strict liability. And if you process a transaction for a sanctioned individual or entity, the stakes are high, the risks are high. So false negative is something that we should be very cautious of, and we should not fall within such a big mistake. Now, when we talk about geopolitical risk, maybe what's happening lately is a clear manifestation. What do we mean by geopolitics? To give you an example, the latest incident, many analysts were talking about like trying to find a different supply chain for the Hormuz Strait, or what is known in Arabic as Madiq Hormuz. So this is a geopolitical risk caused by the war, how to find alternatives, and are the alternatives risk-free or not? So it is the threat, the realization and escalation of adverse event associated with war, terrorism, and other tensions. Another thing is like what's going in between Russia and Ukraine. and its impact on oil prices and the price cap that has been imposed by the G7 along with the United States. And what's going now, whether we're gonna have another deal sealed with Iran or not, creating maybe more opportunities to the industry, to the business, because like a couple of years ago, we used to have what we call the GCPOA, Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, and Trump, in the previous administration, he withdrew from this deal, putting or imposing the sanction back on Iran. So now what will happen? Are we receiving or are we waiting for a second deal or not? And if we got a second deal, are we ready to understand the new sanction landscape of the US sanction and European sanction against Iran? So this is a geopolitics, and this is how it converges with sanctions and compliance. Now back to governance. Definitely governance uh, enhances any compliance culture and any compliance program. Because under a good governance, you will have the three lines of defense working together, not in silos, trying to detect risk from the initial stage, maybe during onboarding or when a transaction is being made to a supplier, to a customer. So the business line will be doing their job. The second line, which features the compliance team, will be doing their job as well. And the independent audit function will be making sure that the internal controls are effective, efficient, and working properly. So this is the mechanics of it. However, for these mechanics to flourish and be of high efficiency, there need to be a culture. And when we talk about culture, we talk about the board cascading down to all layers within the organization. So, there is quite an interesting saying about that culture has strategy for breakfast, meaning even if you've got the best strategy, the best law policy and procedure, without a culture, even the best strategy will fail. So the culture of compliance, where everyone believes to be doing the right job in an ethical way, abiding or complying with the rules, will be something beneficial for all stakeholders within the organization. And from that point, the reporting should be very prompt, timely, leading to key risk indicators that need to be presented to the board, to the management within the bank, like what are, or the business, not necessarily only the bank, like what are the key risk indicators, what suppliers we cannot deal with, what vessels we should not be shipping through. All of these can be like a risk we try to avoid. Now, talking about sanctions, sanction types range from being comprehensive, like the ones we are seeing against Iran, at one point in time, Cuba and Syria, meaning even zero dealings with these countries when it comes to US persons. Now, within that scope, there is something called primary sanctions versus secondary. Primary, from the US perspective, it means that a US person cannot deal with the sanctioned individual, be it Cuban, Iranian, or Syrian. Secondary is about the extraterritorial impact of US sanctions or the long arm reach. What does this mean? It means that we, as foreign individual or non-US persons, also we're not allowed to deal with a sanctioned entity by the United States. And this is what makes the US sanction that strong. It is the extraterritoriality of it, like going beyond the US boundaries. As you will see later in the webinar, for example, the EU does not apply the extraterritorial impact or secondary sanction. It's only the US. So this is gives the power of the US to reach anywhere, any person in every corner of the world by its strong sanctions. The US is more known to be doing unilateral sanction from one side. We have seen this in Sudan, and it's also till today. So it's only the US that have been or has been imposing sanction on Sudan. The EU prefers more to be more on the multilateral, like bringing consensus from other nations, especially EU nations. Then we have the sectoral sanctions imposed by the United States against Russia, especially after the annexation of Crimea back in 2014. Sectoral means it depends on the sector itself. So it's not a full-fledged sanction. It's more about prohibition, like you're not allowed. So instead of blocking the fund, the US bank will be rejecting that transaction if it comes through a US financial institution. Mainly it is within the finance, defense, and energy. So it's more like an oil and gas, finance and defense issue. The UN, definitely the UN, which is the global body for international security and peace, the sanctions from the UN are binding on member states, especially when it comes to terrorist designation and terrorist entities like ISIL, Qaeda. So every country, every financial institution must be complying with these United Nations Security Council sanctions. And this is something reflective of the FATF Recommendation 6, which is Financial Action Task Force R6 about designation of uh, uh, terrorist individuals and blocking the funds of these individuals wherever they are. Magnitsky Act, it's also a US tool imposing sanction on corrupt politicians and human rights abusers. So we have seen many sanctions being imposed on individuals for corruption and for human rights abuse under the Magnitsky Act. Also, the US Patriot Act, which was the byproduct of September 11 attacks, can designate people and the jurisdiction to be of primary money laundering concern, like a country or a financial institution can be designated under the US Patriot Act to be of a money laundering or primary money laundering concern. So it's like quasi-sanction. Now, Patriot Act is not like an acronym or a name meaning patriotism. It is uniting and strengthening America by providing appropriate tools required to intercept and obstruct terrorism. This is the abbreviation of it. And also, autonomous sanction, it means that every country can have its own sanctions. But mind you that if you are a small country, if your currency is not part of the global trade, even if you impose sanction, it is not that effective because your currency, your clearing center for financial transaction is weak, so it will not be of a concern. However, it's called autonomous sanctions. For example, if Australia or Japan has a sanction or Kuwait, it will be called autonomous sanctions. So the basic idea of the UN sanction is to preserve and achieve international peace and security under Chapter 7 of the United Nations Charter. The UN definitely prefers targeted sanction instead of letting the whole society pay the price of sanctions. So we target only those individuals that are corrupt, that are terrorists, or that are destabilizing peace. And this was the big message after the first Gulf War and the Iraqi sanction. We have many casualties, many innocent people paying the price. So the idea of comprehensive sanctions was reconsidered. Under the US, it is the Office of Foreign Asset Control, which administers and manages US sanctions that can be imposed on individual entities and rather vessels, ports, airports, you name it. So when you are doing a supply chain, when you are importing, exporting, you need to be screening a vessel, an airport, a port, to know that your cargo will not be anchoring or visiting that sanctioned port. Otherwise, you will be in trouble. For a simple reason, vessel can evade sanction. They employ evasive shipping technique like ship-to-ship transfer in the open sea. They can manipulate their GPSs, their radars to emit signal in different location. So all of these evasive tactics have been detected by the OFAC and the international community, and countermeasures were put in place. So theoretically, sanctions usually are an alternative to war, but I'm not saying that anymore. Even when they are in place, we are seeing conflicts, we are seeing wars, we are seeing aggression. So maybe also that should be revisited going forward. Sanction lists are ever changing, evolving. We have deletions, we have amendment, we have additions. So screening and looking at sanctions should be real time. So you cannot like do the transaction and the other day you make sure it is uh, 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 not violating the sanction. It should be real time. So, because when it happens, it becomes a strict liability on the business, the organization, or the bank. From a US perspective, who is subject to the US sanctions? So first, all citizens or all US citizens and permanent resident aliens are subject to US sanction regardless of where they are located. So even when a US citizen is in Italy, they are still responsible to comply with their OFAC or US sanctions. Second, all persons and entities within the United States. So now if I visit the United States for tourism, the moment I land in the United States, I'm responsible to comply with their sanctions. The third category is all US incorporated entities and their foreign branches. So let's say Microsoft Dubai, Cisco Kuwait. All of these are branches for US incorporated entities, meaning they have to comply with US sanction even when they have presence outside the United States. So this is roughly the categories that need to be compliant with the US sanctions. Almost the same applies for the European Union sanction regimes. Now we come to the 50% rule that Muhammad earlier alluded to, that it is part of our conversation today. Now, the 50% rule, what does it mean? It means simply that if I, Shawki, owns 50% or more in an entity, and I get on the US sanction list or the OFAC list, the entity I own becomes de facto sanctioned, even if it's not on the OFAC list or the SDN list. Now, the same is under the European law, and like 1 year ago, the European law was greater than 50. Recently, they copied the US formula and also decided to go by a greater or equal than 50. So any entity owned or controlled by an EU citizen, sorry, if it's owned 50% or more, or controlled by an EU citizen that got on the sanction list, that entity becomes de facto sanctioned, even if it's not on the EU list. So this challenge is that we need, as businesses, as banks, as FIs, we need to be doing the identification of the owner and the controller, because it's our responsibility to decide if this is a sanctioned entity or not, regardless of what the sanction list is telling me. And this is not an easy job, I would say. Now, for the commonly used screening list, at a minimum, we should be screening against local list by our own country, the UN Security Council consolidated list, the EU list depending on your exposure, the OFAC list, the UK list. So these are like the leading list within the sanction space, because they come from robust bodies in addition to the EU consolidated financial sanction list. So in reference to what I have just shared with you, if you look at this infographic, I would say, if you look at entity XYZ, if it's owned 50% or more by Mr. John, and Mr. John is on the OFAC list, then definitely XYZ will become also sanctioned. So this is simply the 50% rule. Now, the United States also has gone a bit far due to the Russian sanctions by implementing the aggregation rule. Aggregation rule means that if you've got, as you can see on the slide, like John owns 36% and Julia owns 15%. If John is on the sanction list, he owns less than 50. So XYZ will not be implicated. However, together with Julia, the ownership becomes 51. So the aggregation rule allows for combining the ownership. So if it's more than 50 or equal or greater to 50 by aggregation, so XYZ will also become sanctioned. So this is the aggregation rule, which puts more pressure on businesses and on financial institution in trying to know
Shawik,
if,
just to clarify, here Julia is also sanctioned or not in
yeah,
this
it
case?
is. And if you see, Muhammad, the abbreviation SDN, it is the term used by the OFAC, which is the Office of Foreign Asset Control, meaning a specially designated national. And this refers to the list of the OFAC, the SDN list.
Thank you.
Clear? All right. So now we will be like a bit focusing on the Syria sanction, the very topic of this webinar. First, let me say that usually the Europeans are a bit more aggressive in lifting sanctions than the US. And now I will show you how. So the European are so aggressive in lifting the sanction they used to impose once a change in behavior or a political change takes place. So EU sanctions must be reviewed and renewed at periods no longer than a year and can even be as short as 3 months. However, most US sanctions takes more time to reassess. And that's the reason that today, as we speak, the EU has almost lifted all sanctions against Syria, and that's not the case with respect to the United States. The US sanctions are generally broader in scope. They have a broader impact than the EU, which is, I would say, of a limited impact. US sanctions are extraterritorial. As I mentioned earlier, the EU does not believe in extraterritoriality for one reason. Extraterritoriality to the European Union, which is built on values and freedom, they believe it's a breach on international law. That's why they do not apply extra territoriality. So this is the reason behind the difference between the US extraterritoriality and the non-extraterritoriality of EU sanctions. So now, talking about Syria sanction, what is the relaxation about? So the relaxation has an impact on Syria as a state sponsor of terrorism. So now this is relaxed and Syria is no longer seen as a sponsor for terrorism. Syria Accountability Act as well. The Caesar Syria Civilian Protection Act. However, as of today, the BIS, which is the Bureau of Industry and Security, which is one agency within the US Department of Commerce, still applies export restriction on sensitive equipment and technology like semiconductors, like laser, like other dual-use goods that can be used for military or civil purposes. So this still requires a license and can be prohibited. So the BIS is the Bureau of Industry and Security, which issues a known list called denied export privileges. So it maintains a list of certain companies, individuals, and even countries that are not allowed to import or export certain sensitive equipment that are US manufactured. So this is still in place regarding the Syrian status. Now, another phenomena, I would say, in the Syrian relaxation is that the FinCEN, which is another authority that can put sanctions on foreign countries, and it's the FIU of the United States or Financial Intelligence Unit. It stands for Financial Crime Enforcement Network, has placed Syria as a country and jurisdiction, along with Commercial Bank of Syria as an institution, to be of primary money laundering concern. Now, this aggressiveness to lift sanction by the US had even led to the FinCEN lifting the long-standing provisions of Section 311 of the US Patriot Act. So this is another big development, I would say, and we have never seen this. So it is a completely shifting landscape, like we are seeing 180 degrees changes so quickly. Now, we come to the EU measures. The EU has lifted all remaining economic sanctions on Syria, like energy, transport, banking, reconstruction, infrastructure. What is still in place, arms embargo, restriction on dual use and sensitive technology, and sanction against the previous regime and the associates of the previous regime. Before I flip to the next slide, I want to tell you something important. The EU has also lifted sanctions by unblocking and lifting the asset freeze on Syria's accounts, meaning if the Commercial Bank of Syria or the Central Bank of Syria maintains account within the EU, now these accounts are free and asset freezes are lifted. So all the money pertaining to the Syrian government, Syrian people, have become free from the European side. From the US side, there was no unblocking, or there is no unblocking yet. What is frozen is kept frozen at this moment. So this is another like divergence between the two regimes. Licensing, there are two licensing methodologies or mechanism under the US sanction regime. A GL, which is a general license that is announced, public, no need to apply for, and specific, that you need to apply for to be involved in a certain prohibited transaction. And usually the US authority or the OFAC will not give you the authorization. This is what the history tells us. Now, this is a snapshot of the first GL, which is General License 24 by the US, allowing for transactions that were prohibited. As you can see, transaction with governing institution in Syria, transaction in support of the sale, supply, storage, donation of energy, petroleum, natural gas, electricity, also transaction and remittance processed by the Central Bank of Syria. So all of these have been approved under the first GL, which is 24. And if you can see, it has a time or a deadline, which is July 7, 2025. And now the next GL, which is GL 25, kind of extend GL 24 and give it a more robust push by allowing more transaction to be processed within the Syria government. Now, also in this general license, you see that this general license does not allow anything related to the military, to unblocking of asset, as I said. So there is a time frame under GL 24, which preceded GL 25. And this was a game changer, I guess, for the sanctions of Syria. One important point that I would say it's the basic message of this webinar is that when we see sanctions being relaxed or lifted by a general license, it doesn't mean this is final. This is all temporary, pending a full-fledged change in behavior, and it's a probation period, I would say. So once the US administration, based on foreign policy and national interest, would make sure Syria is aligned 100% to the US foreign policy and is compliant with what the US aspires to, then we will have a lifting of sanction, which is like beyond issuing a general license. So general license is something temporary till now, but definitely allowing for transaction. Now, what is specific about General License 25? It's allowing US persons or foreign person, whether they are in GCC, Asia, East Asia, you name it, any part of the globe, to be dealing with these entities that were blocked, as you can see them tabulated on this slide. So now it's very safe to transact with these previously sanctioned entities that are government entities, banks, financial institution, energy, oil and gas. I mean, many sectors now are uh, 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 under this relaxation and included in this sanction relaxation. So unlike the European Union blanket lifting of sanction, US follows a gradual easing. It's called the gradual easing under the US terminology. And we still have the SDN list existing, meaning if now I open or I share my slide for the OFAC list and I insert Commercial Bank of Syria, you will see Commercial Bank of Syria is still on the OFAC blacklist. However, the General License 25 is allowing me to transact with. So they are still on the OFAC list, but we have the authorization to deal with. This is from a legal perspective what's happening now. No dealings with SDN that are not in the annex of General License 25. So we're still not allowed to deal with SDNs that are not included in this annex of the General License. And as I mentioned earlier, there is no unblocking of frozen assets. Uh, Again, to wrap it up, this general license allow for investment in Syria, dealing in oil and gas, dealing or making transaction with the government of Syria. Any deal can be entered with or can be sealed with the government of Syria. Uh, any transaction with those blocked person mentioned in the annex, telecommunication, power grid, energy, healthcare, agriculture, civil aviation, uh, uh, financial investment, construction, water and waste management, education. US banks can deal with FIs in Syria. So this is like all of these activities have become permissible under the GL or General License 25. Also, the horizon seems very promising and optimistic. Syrian banks are starting to be back on the SWIFT system, which is the platform for transfer and banking transaction worldwide. Uh, Even meetings are underway between US financial institutions and US banks for correspondent banking. Crypto Binance is opening its offices in Syria, and most of the banks are no longer under sanctions, with the exception of two banks, as you can see on the slide, Sham Bank and Syria International Islamic Bank, SIIB. So basically, this is the major shift, and the permissible transaction are really overwhelming. They are numerous, and I guess business can be initiated with Syria, but definitely we need to be vigilant. We need to be a little bit with a forward-looking uh, 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 vigilance or forward-looking behavior in terms of anticipating what happens, keeping an eye on the unfolding of events, and following the news for what's next. I guess this brings us to the end of my presentation.
Thank you very much, Shawki, for this really insightful and comprehensive presentation. I think it answers lots of questions and provide us with very important information about this full landscape, let's say, about the sanctions and how it is being eased. Um, and also, we are seeing so many positive recent easing, as you mentioned, changing this whole landscape. Yet we need to be vigilant and cautious, going back into Syria, contributing to the reconstruction and investment out there. I have some few questions as a moderator just to ask you and to kick off this discussion, and then we will open the floor to the attendees. I know that they have a lot of questions also. So please, if you are interested, raise your hand. I will unmute you directly. So Shawki, uh, basically, how can we, let's say, make sure that going back to Syria, even if we are fully compliant with the sanction landscape and we're not dealing with any entity that is being sanctioned, that is not affecting us on a reputational level. So what kind of communication, what kind of attitude we need to have in order to show that yes, we are going back to Syria, we are investing, we are dealing with Syrian entities, yet in a fully compliant and proper manner.
Yeah, Muhammad. I guess many events have happened concurrently with this relaxation, which gives you like the motivation and the interest and the appetite to be doing business in Syria, like without worrying about the reputation risk. To give you just an example, as a compliance expert, we need to follow the political arena, what's happening in politics. So, for example, we have leading GCC countries supporting Syria now. So, Qatar and Saudi were pioneers in settling the arrears of Syria for the World Bank and the IMF. So they are like bringing Syria to the front, supporting Syria financially for one reason. They see a promise, they see a bright future. So when these leading, I would say, leading countries within the GCC, when the Saudi is a member in the FATF organization or the Financial Action Task Force, doing this, I think, regardless of what we say today, this brings very concrete geopolitical signals that yes, there is a go-go to be doing business in Syria. Plus, I mean, professionally, what we are discussing today, it's also within the law to be doing the business with Syria. So, like from many perspectives, there are solid signs that there is no obstacle, there is no worry. However, when you're doing the business, definitely the business must have a consultant, must have a compliance program. I mean, you will be able to assess as you go any kind of risk, because I mean, you will not go as a freelancer make business in Syria. You need some kind of support. And we are here to support me or governance dynamics.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Thank you for your answer, and I think you answered the other question that I had. So basically, I will have another question before handing over to the audience. So basically, we have some divergence, as you mentioned, between the American and the European list of sanctions and easing strategy. And we can see also that there are different sectors that are being opened before others. So what kind of red flags, if you want to do your homework and to make sure that if you are going into the energy sector, banking sector, let's say, and healthcare sector, Is there some kind of a red flag that or exercise that I would do to make a proper due diligence and make sure that my steps and my plans are safe in regard of the American and the European sanctions?
Yes, if you realize, Muhammad, and the audience as well, strategically, the EU and the US are aligned in terms of what is permissible now. So the sectors, they are aligned and the same. However, the EU, I mean, on the EU level, the EU Commission has lifted the sanction. So there is no sanction by law. In the US, the sanction as a law, it's still there, but it's relaxed through a GL or a general license. And from both perspective, whether the EU or the US, they are still worried and like hesitant for a full-fledged relaxation, meaning banning sensitive goods and dual-use goods. So dual-use goods has a certain connotation within the compliance. So any organization, whether it's in technology, in finance, in energy, they should have an awareness of what is a dual-use good. So this is still like kind of prohibited or need a separate channel for approval.
Yeah.
So that kind of good and services need to be taken into consideration. And if the organization is not aware, I would say they should seek consultancy from
Mhm.
expertise to know if they are involved in what we call goods that can have military as well as commercial usage. Why?
Yes.
Simply because for the international community, Syria still has some security vulnerabilities.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. I can see also we had, and I won't mention names, but we know so many people that were like secondary in a secondary manner sanctioned because they were trading within using goods that are on this list. Yani. So I would say also. Mr. Modiba, I think I'm pronouncing the name properly, is asking you, Shawki, about although sanctions on Syria have been eased and lifted, what risks still remain considering that HTS remains designated as a terrorist organization? And what should financial institutions still consider when reviewing transactions involving Syria?
I guess we made it clear from the outset that this GL definitely led to relaxation. However, the relaxation is only restricted to the people and entities in the GL25 annex. Any entity or person not in the annex is still like before. So they
Yeah,
are still blocked.
yeah.
That's very clear.
And is there an expiry date for the GL24?
The
It's July.
GL24, yes, has a cap or a deadline. However, the 25 extended by
Okay,
default.
okay, okay. And I have another question from Mr. Sidani, Haitham Sidani, asking about what are the, let's say, the repercussions or the consequences of easing and lifting the sanctions on Syria in regards of Lebanese economy and Lebanese businesses, let's say, and trade opportunities and cooperation. I think this is also an opportunity for us.
Definitely. I mean, the opportunity is for the one who grab it first. So there is nothing unique about being Lebanese and dealing with Syria nowadays. What applies to the French, to the American, applies to the
Mhm.
Lebanese. However, the
Yeah,
Lebanese have the advantage and the luxury of being in a proximity to Syria. So, so,
yeah,
so that's the only advantage. And what applies to others applies to them. And Lebanese are free to be starting and commencing business in Syria based on what we have said today. So as
yeah.
long as they are in line of the governance dynamic declaration today, they are okay.
Perfect. Perfect. Uh, يعني, is there anyone wants to ask live his question, raise his hand? Feel free, please let me know. Okay, so basically I will open the floor for first unmute. Okay, come on. Okay, Mr. Okay, just I'm unmuting. Mr. Malik, you can join. Can you unmute yourself and
Yeah, thank you so much for the valuable information provided. I just have a question regarding the BIS licensing and how this will impact the companies inside Syria, because a lot of items, a lot of information, or a lot of assets, let me say, U.S. origin, it needs licensing to be used in Syria. So how this will be easy for the companies that when they deal. For example, just giving an example, the IT equipment. The IT equipment cannot be used in Syria until we have a licensing. So is this how this will be easy for the companies to comply with? Is it available channels for those companies to deal with the OFAC to get those licenses or not? This will be my question. Thank you.
thank you.
Yes, Malik. Thank you. Thank you for the question. Actually, everything has a process within the US, and when it comes to sensitive goods or denied export privileges, it's not under the OFAC remit. It is under the BIS, or what's called on the broader level EAR, or the EAR regulation, exportation. It slipped my mind. It's the EAR. Exportation Administration Regulation, which talks about export of US product to the outside. However, if you visit the BIS or the Department of Commerce site, you may have how the licensing process starts. Definitely, the interested company or someone who wants to export this US manufactured product can apply for a license, and maybe they will be granted the license. Nothing, because the BIS is not as strict as the OFAC, so it can be authorized. And I would say also one thing, that generally speaking, not every IT department may fall under sensitive product. So it may be like maybe a general IT item or something that is used in normal information technology infrastructure, but definitely the BIS website must be visited, get first hand on the licensing process, and it will be a clear or straightforward process for the applicant to apply and see the feedback.
Yeah. Just on the side note, companies, Syrian companies, let's say, and even foreign companies going into Syria, how much is it important for them to have a compliance officer, compliance management system, compliance framework, and investing in training program more in details, in depth about the sanctions and the regulations related to this in order to make sure that we are managing this kind of exposure. So what kind of advice we can give at this level?
Yeah, definitely every compliance program, Muhammad, should be reflective of the company size, complexity, geographic footprint. So now you tell me, let's say Total or ExxonMobil is going into Syria to invest in oil and gas. Definitely, these companies have a huge compliance team. I would say a compliance army, not a team. So they know the rules of the game. But maybe for a small enterprise, maybe they cannot afford, maybe they can have an expert, a contractual, but they need to have the knowledge. They need to be heeding the risk. They need to be mitigating the risk, how to build the contract, how to enter the market, because everything is now like fresh. We are still exploring. Even maybe the US administration and the EU are still like not knowing how to take an upper hand in this relaxation, because you're talking about 14 to 15 years of isolation. So it needs time for things to get a little bit flexible and going on. But any transaction that is a bit material need a compliance skill, a compliance know-how, awareness with the laws and regulation.
Yeah, Mr. Ahmad Al-Ahmad, you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yeah, thank you. Back to BIS license. When we talk about sensitive items or for the IT, for example, Microsoft or Windows, it's US origin item, it's a US company. For the business, organization, whatever, in Syria, they cannot use officially Windows or Microsoft Office, whatever. It's not related to dual use item, I think, but it's an origin US company, right?
Exactly. Yes, Ahmed. So you are referring to a purely US origin product. Now, if we consider the Windows as a non-dual use good, there will not be a problem. But let's say that according to the US, this, I don't know, software or application or browser may be used as a dual use goods item. What you can do is you can reach out to Microsoft, let's say regional office, which is a US person, which knows better about US regulation. Be transparent with them, like let them know everything about you if you are like someone who wants to import or buy this stuff. And they will try to either do it on spot or they will help you in applying for a license, or they will do it before giving you an answer. So once Microsoft knows that their customer, which may be you or another Syrian individual, is not involved in dual use good and it is for civil use or educational or business, I guess things will be clear and getting the license will be much easier.
Thank you, Shawki. I have another question, actually. What's taking place now in Syria? Did we see it or observe it somewhere else with, let's say, in another country where they were under sanctions and it was no? So this is all new so there's no possibility of lessons learned or let's say comparison. Okay.
Caught me on this. History will talk about this sanction lifting. Give you one reason. As per the US law, as per the US sovereignty, you're not allowed as a US person to deal or talk with a US sanctioned individual. Even the US visited the new Syrian regime, which for one reason or another, they are on the SDN list, and this has never taken place in history.
Wow.
So what we have learned from Syria is that things can go upside down, I mean, in seconds, I would say. So it was a big shift in the relaxation. Maybe because the change was so rapid.
Yeah, exactly. So Do we have other people interested to ask more questions? Amazing. I guess we reached our endpoint for this webinar today. Thank you, Shawki, for your really detailed and comprehensive presentation, as we said before, especially after a very long day of work that you had today. So with all your heart and with all your commitment, we really thank you. I think I'm speaking on behalf of everyone on this webinar. And I would like to thank everyone joining us for this webinar. Thank you, and we will see you again within our next webinar. Stay put, follow us on LinkedIn, and make sure that you spread the news also whenever we are sharing a new webinar and opportunity for everyone. Thank you, and see you within our next webinar. Thank you, Shawki.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.